All right, so for this section, we're going to talk a little bit about geographic patterns and species diversity on the planet. And I want to make it extremely clear, especially for these first few slides, is I'm not going to ask you any of these specific numbers. What I'm trying to show you is trends. So here's what I want you to kind of pick up on. We've got latitude over here on the left and ant species on the right. I took this from E.O. Wilson and Mr. Ant-Man. And I want you to realize, 0 is the equator. So at 20 degrees north there's 100 to 200 different species of ants. 40 degrees north, there's 50 to 100. 60 degrees north, there's 10. So as we move from the equator toward the North Pole, what you're seeing is a trend of more species at the equator and less species at the pole. So that should be pretty clear. So that I'm not going to ask you at 40 degrees how many ant species are there. All right, and then we're going to do bird species. I like birds, and so we're going to do that. We pick countries instead of latitudes. And again, this was from a different paper, but here what I'm trying to do is show you trends. And so Colombia, if you know, is a South America country toward the equator, 1,395 breeding bird species. Guatemala, which is a Central America, 469 species. New York, 105 species. North America, top right. Greenland, up by the pole, 56 species. So again, we're seeing that trend of breeding birds as we move up. And so here's bird diversity in North and Central America. So if I'm looking at this map, where do I go in the United States to see the most birds? And if you look, it turns out there's lots right up here in California. And if you look down here, 220, what I will tell you is this is a hotspot. I've been there. This is Portal, a place called Portal, Arizona. As a matter of fact, you have to kind of drive through the street and back up or go down a dirt road to get there. There is a little tiny motel there. There was a little tiny motel there with a few rooms and a kitchen. And I will tell you, never get the chef's special because that is the day before's food in a casserole of some sort. But anyway, that is kind of the equivalent. But there are some species you won't find anyplace else in the United States. The Chiricahua Mountains run right through here, so you get different types of niches. And this is where there's a bird called a trogon. That's where I saw lots of hummingbird species are actually through here, migrating through. So this is actually a very cool place to go. Been there a couple of times. But anyway, so you can see though, if I'm looking at bird species, again, that trend as I head up north, you tend to get fewer and fewer species. So I just want to point out again these trends. All right, and just to make sure you understand that this is also true for the marine species. It's not just terrestrial species. Tunicates are a type of chordate. When we did the chordata, we kind of started with the agnatha, which was the jawless fish, but there is actually a couple of different organisms. One is called the tunicate, which almost looks like a sponge. It's not a sponge. It has the 4 chordate characteristics as a larval form. But filter feeders. And anyway, what you can see again is, the trend is what I'm looking for, 600, 400, 100. I'm not looking for numbers, but tropical, temperate, Arctic. So you get the idea. So as we go up, you get fewer and fewer species. Oh, easy stuff. All right, so here's another paper. E.J. Tramer did bird species, and this time he looked at a latitude belt. And this is what Darwin did and Wallace did, is instead of going north and south, what I'm doing now is I'm going around the Earth on this latitude belt where I'm 20 or 40, whatever the number is, but I'm on that belt and looking at habitats along that belt and how many species they carry. And for some reason, things are not lined up anymore. That's not good. So I need to fix this. I'll fix this with the hard copy that I post. But again, the marsh will have 6, grassland will have 6. So these two have the same amount of bird species. The shrublands and the desert both have 14. And then the coniferous forest, upland forest, and floodplain deciduous 17, 21, and 24. So what you're seeing here is an increase. And I want you to think about what these habitats look like. Marshes and grasslands are really kind of uniform. They have one level. And so this is going to only get you 6. Now, shrubland and desert, what you're adding is a second level of shrubs along with your grasses and what we call forbs. And you'll have a few trees. So with that, you add more species. You know, a desert, you think, oh, they don't have much. They actually, because of the extreme conditions, they have lots of diversity. And then when you get to the coniferous forest, upland deciduous, and floodplain deciduous, what you're seeing here is more of an increase because you've added a third layer, and that third layer is the tree layer, and it's a heavy tree layer. So again, you have a lot more niches. So what I want you to know is this is actually done by a woman named Mary Wilson out at Michigan University. And she came up with something called foliate. She's not the first one to do it, but she came up with strong evidence of foliage height diversity, that each time you add a new layer, you add new habitats for additional species. Each layer is a new niche. That's why actually it's not on our list, because it's not in our the same latitude belt. But the tropical rainforest has more species than anywhere else. And depending on who you talk to, they have 6 or more layers. 6 is kind of the agreed upon number. Although I have seen now papers suggesting that some of these layers may be divided more distinctly. So I've seen as much as 8 layers. It doesn't matter. Again, but adding more height adds another layer of niches for more species. All right, so last thing on this idea is North American diversity by MacArthur and MacArthur. MacArthur and Wilson. One of these MacArthurs was the MacArthur involved in island biogeography. The other one was his brother. And so anyway, what we want to look at mammals, birds, breeding land birds, and reptiles and amphibians in the United States. And what I want you to realize is mammals and breeding land birds, again, kind of follow what we've been talking about, increase from north to south. So that we're going backwards, obviously, but there's more toward the south in mammals and birds. And as you go north, there's fewer. Now, again, there are some islands that might have a lot, but for the most part. The other thing I want you to know is more mammals and breeding land birds in the west. It turns out the west over the east on a latitude belt, we will see more mammals and more breeding land birds. The reason this is the case is heterogeneity. That's a fancy word of saying different habitats, different niches. That again is why people want to live in California, and again why we have so many endangered species. So if I'm a biologist that was really looking at working with birds and mammals, if I want to look for diversity, it's in the Southwest. It's exactly where we live. Reptiles and amphibians are a little different. They're more abundant in the east. Reptiles, because of the mountains, they have some habitats there, although we have obviously large habitats here, and we do have reptiles in our desert, don't get me wrong. We have reptiles in our neighborhoods, but they tend to be more, and the east has more amphibians due to the water that they get versus us. We're a lot drier out here. So anyway, I would like you to know kind of that diversity here in North America. And with that, we'll stop the share and the recording.